Number 1. Alone. The kind of fear in this wrestling is the wrong kind. And I'm gonna first start this out by letting you know that I'm not gay. But Killer Orange Cat, I know you, and a good percentage of your audience, is supportive of gay people, as am I. So I don't want you to think that me saying I'm not gay means I have anything against gay people. But me being straight is important to the story. I used to wrestle back in high school. In fact, I was quite good at it. Although for some reasons that will be revealed in this story, I didn't continue wrestling all throughout high school. However, I did pick it back up when I went through college. The incident that led to a problem in high school happened when I was practicing after school. The whole team was wrestling in the gymnasium. The mats were spread out all over the gym, some distance away from each other as they always were. This gave the coach room to walk around and observe all of us while we were practicing. I was wrestling a guy named Greg. He was absolutely the worst guy on the team. Although he was a competent wrestler, I'm mostly talking about his personality. It was pretty dreadful, and I couldn't stand anything about the guy. I just hated him. But I put it all aside when we were on the mat because I had a job to do. Well, we were locked up pretty good, and I was able to get him off balance and roll him onto his shoulders for what would have been a pin, and I felt pretty good about it. Well, Greg, not happy about being pinned, pushed me off him and stormed out of the gym in anger. This was not too surprising because he had always been something of a sore loser. Later in the locker room, I noticed Greg talking to some other guys, and they kept looking at me and giving me weird looks. It was not until later that I had found out why. Greg told his friends that he hadn't stormed out of the gym because he lost. He had stormed out because I had gotten aroused during the match and made a pass at him. He claimed to them that he was so disgusted by this that he had to get as far away from me as possible. I, of course, denied that any such thing had happened because it obviously hadn't. But by that time, a few days later, the accusation spread throughout the entire school, and many people believed Greg mostly because it always seemed like people would take the word of the first person involved in such a disagreement. Although I denied being gay, I quickly became known around the school for being gay, and that made my life very, very difficult for me. This happened back in a time and back in an area where things weren't as accepting as they are nowadays. So despite the fact that I was completely straight, I was discriminated against by many in the school for being gay. I was eventually removed from the wrestling team because everyone on the team refused to wrestle with me. I guess I could have fought it, but I didn't really see the point. I mean, especially after them deciding not to believe me. I really didn't want to wrestle them anyway. I would be walking down the hall and have slurs and things yelled at me. And the funniest thing is that it didn't matter or make a difference if I protested it. It didn't matter if I told people it was a lie. It was something that they had already decided to believe, and I couldn't do anything about it. I stayed after school late one night. I was working on a paper and I needed to do some research in the library. I was having a can of Pepsi while I was working, and I was the only one in the library at that point. The librarian was nowhere to be found. I was startled by a noise, which caused me to knock the Pepsi all over myself. I ended up a sticky mess and wasn't sure at first what to do. Then I remembered that I still had my locker in the locker room. I had my gym clothes in it, and I could go into there and change out of the sticky clothing. So I made it through the hallway towards the gym. Schools can be really scary when they are empty. I don't know if it is because you are used to seeing them so full of people, but it could also be because of how dark it was. But the locker room was that way too. I got into there and it was pretty dark. I made my way over to the aisle that my locker was down. I took my stuff out of my locker and began to get cleaned up. It was only once I had taken my sticky clothing off that I realized I would need to take a shower. I made my way over to the shower and nothing but a towel. It was right before I entered the shower that I heard a noise. and it sounded like someone was behind me in the locker room. Before I could turn around, I felt someone slip something over my head and then around my neck. They began pulling on it, in effect strangling me. I struggled really hard to get away from them, but that's not always easy when you are being choked. I wasn't getting any air, and that will sap your strength really fast, something I knew as a wrestler. I tried and tried, but I just got weaker and weaker. I honestly thought there for a while that I was going to die. I know that at some point I passed out, but I can't really remember when. I think I blanked out part of the struggle. But I tell you, I was absolutely sure that I was being murdered, and I would never see my family again. I'm not sure how long I was out, but I woke up in the showers. They were on and I was really, really cold. My neck hurt really bad, and I had the worst headache that I could have possibly imagined. I was also naked in the shower, but I guess if there is one place you could be naked in where it won't seem weird, it would have to be the shower. I got up unsteadily and made it to my feet. I went back to my locker since my towel had been taken. Getting back to my locker, I found that both my gym clothes and my sticky day clothing had been removed. Whoever had attacked me obviously wanted to humiliate me even more by making me remain naked. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to call the cops or anything, so I did the only thing I could think of. I looked and found some dirty towels. I wrapped one around myself, and then I decided to walk home. I didn't live very far from the school, but it was still a very humiliating thing to do. A few people yelled things at me, but I had already learned to ignore them by that point. I didn't ever tell anyone about what had happened. I didn't know who attacked me. I don't know to this day who attacked me. I only know that it never happened again. And once I graduated and went to college, things got a whole lot better for me. But I still have some very unpleasant thoughts related to what had happened. Number 2. Wrong words. Back in the early 1980s, I spent a lot of time on the same cards as Buddy Landau. He lived here in Jacksonville and was working for Boris Malenko and Don Curtis in their Sunbelt wrestling promotion. He was just a kid, 22, 23, but he had talent, charisma, and a gift of gab. Everything needed to be a star in the pro wrestling area of the 1980s. Bleach blonde hair, an obnoxious attitude, and absolutely no filter on his mouth made him a hated heel everywhere he went, and he loved every minute of it. Sunbelt folded, and that's another story for another time, and Buddy started working for East Coast Championship Wrestling, which was where I was working at the time. We had a training facility in the old Scaff's dairy farm barn that had become a flea market. We had a ring, some weights, a few pads, and one industrial fan. That was all we had to work with, and I miss that old place every day. This was 1983, by the way. Buddy started coming to the ring to work out, and he joined our roster. To say he livened up things would be an understatement. The kid was out of control. He would work out for a few minutes and then keep us mesmerized with bar stories. Larry Simon, Malenko stories, Bob Roop stories, who he had been rooming with, and the endless ring rat stories, which we always doubted till we went on the road with him. I never learned a single wrestling move or hold from Buddy, but man oh man, did I learn about heat. We were at a show in South Carolina, Paris Island, at the Marine Corps Training Center. The house was sold out. What else did Marines have to do? About 800 Marines, sober, and looking for entertainment. I was working tag team with my partner at the Smurfs, Korean Dynamite, against adorable Rick Anderson and Snake Watson. Buddy was the main event against Mr. Wrestling, and it turned out that he was lucky he was working Mr. Wrestling. Before the main event started, Buddy got on the microphone and worked the crowd up with some insults about jarheads. The Marines got mad and yelled back. He then looked over at the front row and saw a woman sitting there. So Buddy, being Buddy, he said, "Hey lady, I don't know who you are, but cross your legs because I can." He then recited some really bad things about her hygiene. The place went nuts. There were Marines storming the ring en masse, hundreds of them. The officers and drill instructors were trying to hold them back. Buddy was swarmed in the ring and getting a beating. The promoter was yelling for the locker room to get out there and help Buddy. We ran and began trying to pull the Marines off him. Thank God Mr. Wrestling got on the microphone and started yelling, "Leave him alone. He's mine." Mr. Wrestling and the drill instructors, along with all of us, cleared the ring. Mr. Wrestling called for the bell and hit his knee lift, and Buddy went down, and Mr. Wrestling got a real quick 1, 2, 3. Buddy ran to the back. As Mr. Wrestling apologized on the microphone to the lady, who was the chaplain's wife, which explains why the Marines went crazy like they did. We had to take Buddy and hide him in the trunk of our car before he changed out of his gear, and we left as fast as we could, but there were some pissed off Marines looking for and waiting for Buddy Landell that night. Marines kept stopping us and telling us to tell the SOB they were going to find him and kill him as we were leaving the parking lot. We went back to the condos the promoter had for us in Hilton Head. Don't think we were treated that well. 2 3-bedroom condos and 18 workers. Buddy was shook up. Hell, we were all shook up. No one had been in that big of a riot before. Buddy gets a shower and comes out with a few marks, bruises, and a busted lip. He looks at us guys and says, "Let's go party. I need a woman tonight." About that time, the promoter and Mr. Wrestling comes in, and well, we didn't go out partying that night. But we went to a nice, quiet hotel bar and unwound after Buddy got chewed out big time. There was another show the next night in Hilton Head, and Buddy wasn't on it. Buddy was gone. Buddy was the life of any party, even if there wasn't a party. He made you feel like you were at one. He was a good guy who sometimes couldn't control his demons, much like all of us at one time or another. But he could have made a lot of money in this business, and he did make money. But he just couldn't stop being nature boy Buddy Landell. The loudmouth, over-the-top, no-filter pain in the ass, troublemaking know-it-all, rat chaser, hated heel. He wasn't real life. As I'm writing this, I can still see him and hear him with that voice that was part whisper and part southern drawl. He was a ladies' man, an incredible heel 24/7. The wrestling world lost a hell of a worker when you left us. Rest in peace, Buddy. This story was submitted by Hallie Wilson. He is a former pro wrestler that I follow on the website Quora. I asked Mr. Wilson to submit a scary wrestling story for me, and he provided a really good story, I believe. I really enjoy reading his stories on Quora. If you enjoyed this story and would like to follow Mr. Wilson on Quora, I will leave his information in the description of this video. Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for providing this story about Buddy Landell, a wrestler that I miss as well. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, feel free to click the subscribe button and the bell below, or wait for the icon of Ichigo the Cat that will appear at the end of this closing. Leave me a comment, and share the video with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have an original story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please email it to the address included in the description. But most importantly, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.